Good morning, my fellow yogic travelers. I'm mighty glad to be alive today, and I hope that you are too as we continue to live, laugh, love, learn, linger, live the life we love. Don't forget to loaf and hydrate. You know who I'm talking to out there now, right? Okay. Anyway, let's begin my PowerPoint presentation today called Baby Steps to Quantum Leaps. Nelson Mandela, certainly a person who reminds us all of a life lived based on putting yourself out there for what you believe. In his case, even if you're imprisoned and beaten, right, or tortured, doesn't sour that indefinable, uh, irresistible, undefeatable spirit of a human being. Now, if you're going to practice yoga, certainly in the way I understand it or want to share it, there's no hocus pocus. Hmm? The master of the disappearing act, you're disappearing your ego, your narcissistic grandiosity that's over the top. There's no instant zap to transform yourself. Nobody arrives at this full blown. It's a process, bit by bit. Social integration comes much later. First, get yourself together. Like Dylan says, I know my song well before I start singing. So, you got to start, you got to work on yourself. Total integration almost is like an oxymoron. Who knows what real integration is? You just keep on going as best as you can for as long as you can, and it takes time. And remember, you got to take time for that which takes time. Now, it's an interesting idea. Once you unpeel the surface, the persona, the socially conditioned view of oneself, you don't gain anything. You lose the false identity that prevents you from seeing who you really are. Like Meister Eckhart says, you don't come to spirit by a sense of addition, but by subtraction. Get rid of the stuff that isn't you. What's left? That's you. That's called neti neti in yoga. It's not this and it's not that. Negate everything else. Whatever you're left with, that's it. Now, everybody, just the body itself, just your anatomy, just your DNA is a spiritual apothecary. And everything that we experience in life can be used or seen as tools in your traveling kit. You take it with you. And although sometimes there's teachers, people who influence you along the way, but inwardly, subjectively, there's no guided tour, there's no instruction manual. It's a do it yourself job, and you got a front row seat to it. Now, you're stepping into your power or backing off. Wow, paradigm shift. Yes, when you break through, the old way just doesn't work anymore. One of the examples is like a chicken and egg. It does what it has learned to do, which is to take the nutriment that's on the inside of the egg. And it keeps on doing it until it's exhausted all the nutriment there. And then it continues to do what it was normally doing, which is reaching, pecking, and then it pecks through the shell. And it breaks to the next level. And yes, the next level is a matrix perfectly designed for it, just like the egg was perfectly designed for it at the previous stage. But now your whole view of life, the significance and value of what you're doing, completely shifted. The old doesn't work anymore. So don't be afraid of death. Be afraid of an unlived life. You don't have to live forever, you just have to live. So happiness becomes a byproduct of a good life, not something to be pursued in and of itself. Joseph Campbell made an impact with me. He says, most people don't want to know what the meaning of life is because deep down everybody knows it's a mystery. It's a mystery. Nobody knows. What people really want, according to him, is a full experience of being alive. I get that. I can roll with that. Next, I failed over and over again. That's why I succeed. Michael Jordan, from Chicago, I want to be like Mike. You take those lessons, you take the regrets that come from failure, and you learn. No one can change unless they see things differently. Because if you don't want to see, you won't. He's taken over 900 shots, lost 300 games, but he also had many game winning shots. Or as we used to say here, like, you miss every shot you don't take. If you don't ask, it's always no. What do you have to risk? But the idea, of course, is to have a personal experience, not to base your life on somebody else's personal experiences, but what a lot of religion is. People buy into what somebody else said instead of having the direct experience between themselves and spirit. In the Bhagavad Gita, it says, like a well is useless when water is flowing everywhere, so is the sacred Lord to the discerning. You have to go beyond even what the scriptures and the revealed teachings of a specific culture are to find a direct experience. You're not like a priest who's just a functionary for the doctrine but may not have a direct experience. You're like a shaman who has a personal connection with the local deity or the universal deity. So this is a tough one, Upeksha, to leave people alone, to be indifferent in a certain way to evil if you really understand what karma is. Let the mind of the wise disturb not the mind of the unwise. Good work ain't cheap. Cheap work ain't good. Recognize it, keep away from it. Design your own life. Bring the spiritual values into your own life. And then remember, all conform to their own nature. Who can restrain them, it says in the Gita. Do your own dharma, even if done poorly, then another dharma done well. Even if you're a street sweeper, it can be a magnificent life. Like Rumi says, if your inner work is great, no outer work can be small. And if your inner work is small, no outer work can be great. So get your inner work together. And remember, all knowledge in yoga comes from actions. It's something that you do and then you experience it. All the practices culminate in knowledge. It's superfluous to try to separate the philosophy from the discipline of it. I like to think of yogis as the gymnosophists. Gymnosophists. They use what seems to be these movements on the outside of the body, but they use it to discern wisdom. And we know that from the time of Alexander the Great, there was a guru that was brought back from the Indus Valley, so that by 322 BC, there was already those east to west flows, even though the Silk Road probably existed before that. But we certainly know by 322 BC, India's influence was making its impact on the West. So we must be willing to relinquish the life that we've planned so as to have the life that is waiting for us. Can we let go of our attachment to what the supposed facts have been and be open to what's really there staring us in the face, but we don't recognize it or resistant to accept it, take that next step? Well, whatever you do, if you want to understand the relationship between the baby steps and a quantum leap, like putting a piece of salt in water, you hardly taste it. Keep adding more salt, it gets very salty. All of a sudden it gets so salty that it gets to the point of being super saturated. Add one more grain of salt, the whole thing super cools and crystallizes. So all I can say about all of this is be intent on seeing me, see the self in all. Those who sacrifice to the gods, go to the gods. Those who sacrifice to me, capital M-E, whatever that means to you, living spirit, abstract, universal, invisible. Whoever sacrifices and suffers for me comes to me in the end. In yoga, that's called Ishvara Pranidhan. It's the ultimate samadhi to merge yourself with living spirit.